If you pay attention to the very end credits of Kevin Smith's Clerks, you will see that it is promised that Jay and Silent Bob would return in Dogma. Even before he shot his first film, Smith was thinking about what would end up being his fourth. The controversial film would go through 8 different script versions until it was finally put to film. The results were lauded by critics, hated by religious groups, and enjoyed by Smith fans. What happened between the idea for the film and when it finally hit movie screens could almost be a film itself. Let's break down all the twists and turns of Dogma before it was released. Kevin Smith has been very open about his Catholic upbringing. As he began thinking about making his first film, he started to take notes for an idea about a movie named God. While still in film school in Vancouver, he wrote out the scene that introduced the 13th apostle, Rufus. This version did not include Jay and Silent Bob, and the main character was portrayed as a high school jock. He put the story to the side as he focused on writing Clerks. Over the production of his first film, he would still jot down notes and ideas for his God movie. The ideas involved Rufus, the jock character, and a muse named Serendipity. He still didn't have a story, but knew there was something to this idea. By the time Clerks had been picked up by Miramax, he had begun writing what would be the first draft of the script. He decided the name God would be inappropriate for the film, and it was changed to Dogma. The first script came in at 148 pages. He had also changed the characters up quite a bit. The high school jock was dropped in favor of a stripper named Bethany. She would meet Jay and Silent Bob at a nudie booth. Bethany would end up blowing up the church at the end of the film in order to keep Bartleby and Loki from entering. The film seemed to be a big order for Smith and his producer Scott Mosier. They realized something this huge would be a tall order for their sophomore film, and instead went with Mallrats. During this period, Smith still worked on more versions of the screenplay. Bethany went from a stripper to working at an abortion clinic for one, and orangutan was also included in the script for Jay and Silent Bob to monkey around with. This was teased at the end of Mallrats, but once again, fans would have to wait to see the fulfillment of that plotline. The orangutan would get dropped from Dogma altogether, but end up as a plotline in the Smith-penned Jay and Silent Bob comic book. Suzanne would finally make her live-action debut in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. With multiple drafts under his belt, Smith finally felt ready to make the film. As Chasing Amy was racking up positive buzz at Sundance, Smith went to meet Harvey Weinstein about moving forward with Dogma. His plan was to have his then-girlfriend, Joey Lauren Adams, play Bethany, while Ben Affleck agreed to play Bartleby, and Jason Lee was tapped to play Loki. Basically, he just wanted to take the cast from Chasing Amy and move him on to the next film. Harvey put an end to that real quick. He said they could do the movie for $4 million, but that meant that Joey Lauren Adams couldn't play Bethany and that his DP, David Klein, couldn't shoot it. They felt they had too much money invested in it and needed a more experienced cast and crew. Smith and Mosier had to return to where the cast and crew were staying that night and break the news. They were upset, but understood that Smith had to take the offer to bring such a personal story to life. In Dogma, a worker at an abortion clinic is visited by the angel Metatron. He informs her that 2 angels are trying to undo all of creation. He needs her to stop them from entering a church in New Jersey. The 2 led a revolt of the angels in heaven and were banished to earth. Now, a church is offering that anyone who enters through the doors of the church will be forgiven of their sins. This will negate the power of God and end all existence. At the moment, God seems to be missing from heaven, as they had been on an earthly vacation when 3 teenagers jumped the body they had taken over. With him now in a coma, no one was able to stop the angels. He informs her that she will be joined by 2 prophets on her journey from Illinois to beloved New Jersey. This is when she meets the infamous Jay and Silent Bob. Along their journey, they're joined by the 13th apostle Rufus, the muse Serendipity, and run afoul of the 2 angels they're trying to stop, Bartleby and Loki. Bethany also learns that she is the last descendant of Christ, which is what allows her to be able to stop them. The film finally culminates in a battle outside the church to stop the angels from entering. The film is filled with Smith's usual sense of humor, but has an interesting story at its heart about what religion means to people and how it can sometimes be twisted by humans for their own means. Without being able to use some of the original cast he wanted, Smith set out to fill the roles in the film. The script was sent out to a few actresses for the lead. The one Smith really hoped to get was Gillian Anderson. He was a huge X-Files fan and thought she'd be perfect for the character. She would end up passing on the part, of course, and in later interviews, Smith would say that she absolutely hated the script. For the role of Rufus, Smith thought Samuel L. Jackson or Will Smith would be good choices. Someone suggested he should cast Chris Rock in the part. The director would meet with Rock and they hit it off right away. Someone then told Smith that they had heard that Alan Rickman was a big fan of Chasing Amy. He would ask to meet with Rickman about the part of Metatron. Alan was thrilled with the idea of playing an angel, so he accepted.
Obviously.
One of the aspects Smith had hoped would play on screen as it did in his mind was having the Shakespearean-trained Rickman play off the Jersey resident Jason Mewes. Their interactions are some of the most delightful things in the movie.
What the is this? Who the are you? Why the did you hug my—
Quite a little mouth on him, isn't there?
What the is it, piano? Why ain't this broad talking?
I believe the answers that you seek lie within my companion's eyes.
What the does that mean? Everyone gone, the happened to that guy's head? I want—
Emma Thompson would be offered the part of God. She gladly accepted, but would end up having to drop out when she became pregnant. Smith would then offer the part to famous singer Alanis Morisssett. On her personality, Smith would say, "There's a Zen Buddhist serenity to Alanis that calls to mind something otherworldly. She carries an air about her that played into the role." For Cardinal Glick, they originally went to comedian Albert Brooks. He would end up passing on the part, and so Smith decided to hit up one of his favorite comedians growing up, the great George Carlin. He would end up accepting it, as he thought someone who was famously an atheist would be amusing playing a Catholic cardinal.
You know who I prayed to? Joe Pesci.
Summer and both of his kids are still going to school here.
Linda Fiorentino would be cast as Bethany. Instead of Jason Lee, Matt Damon would step in to play Loki after the successful pairing of him and Ben Affleck in Good Will Hunting. Jason Lee's schedule would fill up, so he would take the smaller role of Azrael. As production neared, Smith told Jason Mewes that he had to be on his best behavior on the set of this movie. He pointed to Alan Rickman as one of the main reasons. He said that he was a very serious actor and wouldn't put up with any sort of unprofessionalism.
I'm acting like a professional. I'm the only professional. We're supposed to be f***ing professionals.
So he had to know his lines, show up on time, and be his best. Mewes took the words to heart and came back later with his lines memorized. Smith didn't believe him, so he put him to the test. Believe it or not, Mewes recited his lines perfectly. He then told Smith that he had not only had his lines memorized, but all the other parts as well. Smith then picked a random page and started reading off some lines, to which Mewes recited all of the characters' dialogue. Smith was amazed, and Jason Mewes said he didn't want to piss off that Rickman dude. One person who maybe didn't exercise as much professionalism was Linda Fiorentino. Smith had said she was difficult to work with. Sometimes things would get so hard between them, she couldn't even speak to him. This frustration led Smith to later stating that he had wished he had offered the part to Janine Garofalo instead. She had a small part playing Bethany's coworker at the abortion clinic. This rift between the two lasted for almost 2 decades. When Smith suffered his heart attack in 2018, Fiorentino called to check on him. During this conversation, he apologized. He had been so vocal about their on-set issues. The two were able to mend fences, thankfully. There are a couple of fun cameos in the film that fans might have missed. The nun from the opening of the film is played by Betty Aberlin. With the habit on, most viewers might not recognize her right away, but she is best known for playing Lady Abigail on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. At the time, no one would have noticed, but now fans of Impractical Jokers will notice a very young Brian Quinn, aka Q, in the background as Bartleby and Loki walk through the airport. Quinn used to work in the View Askew offices. Smith first met him after Quinn sent him a cassette tape of him going into a local comic book shop and telling off the owner, who had previously badmouthed Smith. He thought this recording was hilarious and offered him a job working in the office. Jeff Anderson from Clerks makes an appearance as a gun shop owner. This is the first film that he appeared in after Clerks. He felt he should have been paid more after Clerks had become such a big success, but he finally dropped the issue and reunited with Smith for this film. He would go on to appear in multiple other Smith films. He would even go on to direct his own film, Now You Know, which was produced by Kevin Smith and released by the Weinstein Company. Kevin Smith's friend Brian Johnson would get name dropped in the film as well. When Rufus is telling Bethany the story that no one else could know, he mentions the name Brian Johnson. He would go on to star in Smith's unscripted series Comic Book Men on AMC. One cameo no one can see is of Gwyneth Paltrow. She had been on the set the day they were shooting in the airport. Ben Affleck had invited her since they had just started dating. She's actually sitting a couple seats away from Ben, just off camera. A few scenes that were changed while the film was being made included the cleanup of the battle at the end by God. In reality, there were several delays in shooting. The church asked them if they could clean up the street in front of the building. Smith decided to go ahead and do that since the church had been so accommodating. He then added the scene in which God cleaned up the damage from the battle to explain why the bloody scene was suddenly gone. When Loki massacres the executives at movie headquarters, the scene was supposed to be more like a John Woo style action scene. Smith decided it might be too much for the film and changed it at the last minute. Instead, the massacre happens behind closed doors with only screaming and gunshots to tell the scene. One thing Smith has joked about in numerous interviews is Ben Affleck trying to improvise in his movies. During the train scene, Affleck improvised the line, thinking that the German word Schuler meant silent. Smith would leave the line in, knowing that Affleck would hate to realize that Schuler actually means pupil. On the sadder side of things, it has been no secret that Jason Mewes has had a long battle with drug addiction. Smith always tried to help him to get sober, but sometimes it was a losing battle. While Mewes had done an excellent job with his acting skills and memorizing his lines, he still fell victim to his demon. Smith wrote multiple blog posts about Mewes' addiction problems and talked specifically about problems during the Dogma shoot. Mewes had been using heroin, and in takes where he wasn't on camera, he would end up nodding off. Smith would pull him to the side and tell him he couldn't do that. Later, when the gang's at the bar and Azrael has them captured, you can see Jay nodding off in some of the shots. This is once again a problem from his heroin use. Thankfully, he would finally get clean and sober years later. When the film was finished, rumblings began to happen that the Catholic League was unhappy about the subject matter of the film. There were protests planned and a boycott of Disney, who was Miramax's parent company at the time. This made the corporation uneasy, and they weren't sure what to do about the film. They began to discuss not releasing it. Harvey Weinstein then bought the distribution rights personally and set up a release through Lionsgate. Even after this strategy, there was still an uproar about the film. Smith didn't understand why people were protesting since no one had even seen the film. No one could even know what was in it. It was later discovered that an early draft of the script had been leaked online. Everything the groups were protesting wasn't even in the finished film. The film was finally released on November 12, 1999. The film was still being protested, and Smith heard there was a protest planned for his local theater. He decided to attend and bring his friend Brian Johnson with him. None of the people at the reportedly small protest had seen the film or knew what Smith looked like. He was able to join in on the protest without anyone recognizing him. That is, until the local news showed up. The reporter recognized him right away and asked if he was the director. He said no and told him his name was Brian Johnson. This led the real Brian Johnson, standing next to him, to scramble to come up with a fake name. They went ahead and interviewed Smith and asked him what he thought of the film.
I don't think it stands for anything positive.
What does it stand for?
I don't know, but I've been told not good.
But he would say that he had enjoyed the director's first film. Dogma would continue the Kevin Smith trend of bringing in hardcore fans but missing with some mainstream audiences. It would go on to be a cult classic, of course, and one of the highest grossing of the View Askew films from Smith's filmography. Critics would praise the film, and Smith would get a lot of acclaim for it. As the years have gone by, lots of Smith fans have noticed the film is hard to find. The physical release of the film has gone out of print, and it's not available on any streaming services. The big reason for this is because the film is owned by Harvey Weinstein. When he bought the rights personally for the initial release, he had the home video rights included. Smith has said he wishes it was more widely available, but there just isn't much he can do about it. He did note that one day he got a phone call from Weinstein and they discussed getting Dogma back out there. Smith was on board and said that Harvey even brought up maybe doing a sequel. Smith said he might have an idea for that. Then, a week later, the horrible allegations about Harvey Weinstein were released. Smith noted then that he realized the call was Harvey checking in to see if Smith would have his back when the allegations came out. Smith felt sick. Since those allegations, Smith has donated his royalties from all of his Weinstein films to the nonprofit Women in Film, which helps women filmmakers. He has tried to negotiate with Harvey to buy the rights back to Dogma for himself, and Smith has said that any offers he's made for the film have been laughed off by the Weinstein lawyers. Sadly, we will probably never see the film broken from the paws of Harvey anytime soon. While Smith is still sometimes chided for his films and social media presence, he has made movies that spoke to a specific generation.
Are you freaking kidding me?
This is a grunge station, right?
No, it's called Classic Rewind.
Our rock is not Classic Rewind.
Dogma, like the rest, found its way into cult movie status and keeps finding new audiences when they're able to stumble upon it. Someday, hopefully, someday it'll enter the streaming ecosystem and so many more fans can discover this strange fantasy film that has two angels trying to break into heaven, Jay and Silent Bob, and a giant poop monster.
This is the entire Smith family. This is my wife Jennifer, this is my daughter Harley, this is my son Vincent. We're all together for the first time on home video. So all the people that hated Dogma and really wanted to do violence against us for its content, now you know what we look like.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. Joe Blow was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.